Hey everyone, it's TK Friday, and this is the joy of editing. Today, it's another full edit. I'm calling this one Zone Mask Deep Dive because I'm using quite a few zone masks in this edit. Sit back, relax, grab a beverage of your choice. I'm your host, Dave Kelly. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to TK Friday, everyone. I'm glad you joined me again today. This is going to be a full edit using a lot of different zone masks. Now, I start out here in Lightroom. And by the way, this image comes to us by Stephen Baggett. Thank you, Stephen, for letting us use your image. As always, you can download this image as well as the PDF notes. I'll have a Dropbox link for you in the description right below this video. Just click on that link and you can download the notes as well as the image. By the way, if you don't yet own the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, you can click on my affiliate link found in the description below this video. Just click on that link. It'll take you to the TK web store where you can purchase the TK8 plugin for Photoshop along with training videos. And if you use my promo code DK15, you'll save 15% off your entire purchase. And when you do that, you're supporting the joy of editing with Dave Kelly. And for that, I truly thank you. As always, I start out in Lightroom and make a few basic adjustments. I used a linear profile. This was shot on a Canon R5. You can see the adjustments I've made. Nothing real elaborate here. I usually start out by clicking on auto and then just retweak a little bit. I want to keep, a nice histogram. I don't want to clip my highlights or shadows, as I'm not doing here. And then I use lens corrections and no noise reduction on here, just a slight amount of sharpening. That's basically about it. There's a little bit of vibrance added to this, a little bit of saturation, but just typical stuff. Nothing fancy here, because I'm going to save all that for Photoshop and the TK8 plugin for Photoshop. There's a couple stray grasses here that I'm going to get rid of. I tried to eliminate these in Lightroom, but didn't have very good success, so I did that in Photoshop. I just used the clone tool. Your image will not have those grasses. And here we are in Photoshop, and again the grasses are gone. I just used the clone stamp tool to get rid of them. I made a few change-ups on my setup for my TK8 plugin for Photoshop, so it may look a little different to you today. Hey, if you'd be interested in a short video on how to set up your TK8 plugin for Photoshop, let me know in the comment section below. Hey, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This helps to promote the joy of editing with Dave Kelly. When you do that, I really appreciate it. And don't forget to leave comments and questions. I always start my edits out with a balance and contrast adjustment. And in this image, I'm going to use a separate balance and contrast for the foreground and sky. I'll start out by clicking this button on the combo panel, and this will select the sky out. And then if you click this button here, you could save that as a channel, and I'll just type in sky and click OK. And now what we can do is there's an invert button here and an invert button here on the combo panel, and this one will invert your selection. So invert that by clicking this, and now save that as a foreground and click OK. And now you'll notice I have sky, foreground, sky, foreground. These are carryovers from my previous edit. I'm going to get rid of these guys here. I don't really need them. Just click on a channel and click the trash can and click yes. Click on the next one, click the trash can and click yes. No use having two skies and two foregrounds. By the way, you'll notice we have two trash cans. We have this trash can in brown and we have this trash can here. Now the reason for two trash cans, this trash can gets rid of anything on layers, and this trash can will get rid of all of the alpha channels. So if you want to clear out all your channels, just click that trash can button. Now that only gets rid of the channels that you made, not the channels like the RGB, red, green, and blue. It won't get rid of those, or layer masks and things like that. I'm going to start out with the foreground balance and contrast. So what we'll do is click on the My Channels button, and we could choose either active selection or foreground, because I do have a foreground active selection, so either one would work. I'll click on active selection. Now we're going to use the mask calculator, so click on the mask calculator button. We're going to do an intersection, so click on X for intersect. We can X out of the active selection. And now we're going to click on the luminosity mask button, and I'm going to use a midtones 3. And the only reason I do this, and I say this every week when I do this adjustment, is to protect the shadows and highlights from clipping. And now we need to make the calculation by clicking on the equal button. And now you'll notice I only have the foreground selected with that midtones 3 on it. Well, I'll put it to a color grading tool. And I love the color grading tool. And it's great for this opening balance and contrast adjustment because we can adjust shadows, midtones, and highlights as well as do some color grading if we need it. I'll start out with a shadow adjustment, so click on this black block for shadows. And I'm just going to deepen up those shadows to maybe right about here. I think looks pretty good. Then I'm going to go to midtones, click on the gray block, and I'm just going to open up the midtones to maybe somewhere right about here. And then I'm going to move to highlights, and I'll just open up the highlights. I think maybe right about here should be good. I'm going to go back to shadows and just add just a slight amount, not very much, just a little bit of blue into the shadows. And let's go to midtones, and I'm just going to add just a slight amount of blue in the midtones as well. And now here is the before, and here's the after. Not too aggressive of a first adjustment, but pretty good. Now we'll move over to the sky. Right now, the color grading tool is hiding the multi-mask panel, so click the X and that gets rid of it. So now we can see the multi-mask panel, but nothing changes over here on the adjustments we've made. I'm going to click on the My Channels button again, and this time we'll select the sky, so click on the sky. Let's grab the mask calculator by clicking on this button. We're going to do another intersection, so click on X. We can X out of this sky selection here. Next, I'll click on the luminosity mask button. Click on midtones 3 to protect shadows and highlights from clipping. Now we can click equal, and now you'll notice we only have the sky selected, and we'll output that to a color grading tool. There are no real deep shadows up here, so we don't need the shadow blocks. I'll click on the midtone block, and I'm going to drag this back over to somewhere right about here, just to darken up some of the shadow areas. I just want to cool off those clouds a little bit. Maybe, yeah, just a little bit of cooling up there. I'm going to click on the highlight block, and I'll drag it slightly over to the left to maybe right around here. It just tames this down in this light area just a bit. Now, after I do that balance and contrast adjustment, I study my image and see what needs changed. And if I look at this image and I look at this foreground area right here, it's kind of on the light side. So I'm going to work on this next, just to bring it down in value a little bit. Now these grasses down here, these light grasses, just look too light. So I'm going to start with those. And whenever I want to darken something, I always like to use this technique, and that is, well, let's X out of the color grading tool. Let's grab a curves adjustment layer, put a black mask on it. We're going to put it in the multiply blend mode to darken. You don't see anything happening here because I put the black mask on there. But if I click on this X here, you can see how dark the image is, right? I'll click it again, and now you can see the black mask. So the purpose of this X is to disable any mask to see what the effect is like without a mask. So right now, a black mask is hiding. Click the X. You can see what happens without a mask on it. Click it again, and now the black mask is covering up the adjustment. Let me go to this layer where I adjusted the sky. And let's disable that mask, and you can see what would happen to the entire image. It would look like that. But when I re-enable the mask, you can see it's only affecting the sky. Let me make this top layer active again. All right, so we want to darken down the light grasses. So let's try a zone mask. Let's click on this button right here on the multi-mask panel and click some of the light grass in here, like right in here. And we're going to click OK. And as you can see, it's really selecting out this grass. And as you can see, the zone is right at an 8. And so remember my tip, a zone mask is really great if you're between zones 2 and 8. If you're zone 1 or lower or 9 or higher, luminosity masks are the way to go. But I'm right here, so I think I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and lighten this up by adjusting this brightness slider. It lightens up the light areas. And I'll also tighten this up a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit, something like that. And now I want to output this to a black mask, and I already have a black mask there, but this will make sure I have a black mask, a white brush, and I'll be painting through a selection, which is only going to target these light areas. So we'll click this button right here. You can see I have a selection, so when I paint on here with my white brush, I'm painting through a selection. And I'm going to try 40%. On my notes, it says 30%, but let's try 40%. So now I'm just going to paint over these areas. Now I'm going to be careful around the edge because that mask will touch that edge a little bit over there. So I'll make my brush a little smaller when I get over there. So I'm going to make my brush smaller again. Now every time I lift a brush and I paint again, it's going to add more paint down on there. So just paint away, and we will get rid of any of the lightness. Well, not all of it, but we'll just bring it down. But I like this painting method because it lets us selectively darken areas. Some areas we may not want as dark, but other areas we may want darker. So we can lift our brush and paint over those areas, which is very helpful. And just keep painting away till it looks just the way you want it. And I think I'm good. Well, let's take a look at the before. Here is the before, and here is the after. Now, when I study this, the next thing I'm looking at is, I think I want some of the shadowy areas in here a little bit darker. So let's work on that next. I'll use another curves adjustment layer, but right now you'll notice I have a selection. This is not good because if I click on this curves adjustment, it will turn that selection into a layer mask and put it on that layer. So click this button on the combo panel, that deselects it. And now I can click on my curves adjustment button, put that black mask on it again, put it in a multiply blend mode to darken. Let me click on the zone mask button, and we're going to find a value that we want to target. Like right here, this is a dark area. Click OK. And so that is falling right here around a 2 or a 3. And we have this slider here. We can adjust this a little bit. And I think I'll just pull it to the left a little bit to maybe right about here. Okay, so that really targets the area that I'm looking for. And then I can lighten that up by moving this brightness slider to the right to maybe somewhere right around there. And now I'm going to tighten up that area to maybe somewhere right around in here just to really target those dark shadow areas. So all the light areas will go darker when I paint over them. And now all I need to do is output this. I'll use the black mask white brush painting through a selection. So we'll click this button right here. If you want to see what that selection looks like, if you click this button on the multi-mask panel, you can see the water is protected here. So I can paint right over this tree. I got to be a little careful when I get out in here. So I might need to make my brush a little smaller. Click this button to load it back up as a selection again. And I'm still at 40%. On my notes, I have 30%, but I'm going to try 40%. I know I can be pretty liberal out in this area. I can paint right over the tree, darken it up. I have not lifted my brush yet, and I'm just going to paint along here. I'll make my brush smaller and paint in this area to keep away from the edge there. And so I lifted my brush, and I'm going to paint over this again and here. On this rock, in this area in here, maybe on the tree down in here a little bit, and I'll just paint up in here a little bit. And this just builds up a little bit of contrast, which makes this look a lot nicer, I think. So I think I'm pretty good right there. Let's take a look. Here is the before, and here's the after. But see how nice that contrast is built up there. I'll click on my before-after action. We started here, and this is what we look like so far. So far, I'm really liking it. Now, if I notice this area right up in here, it's really sticking out to me. This is nice, this glare on the water here, but I'd like to tone it down a bit. And let's see what we can do to do that. We'll try another zone mask. Now, I want to darken, so I'm going to use another curves adjustment, but not just any curves adjustment. Right now, I have a selection, so let's deselect that by clicking this button on the combo panel. Let's use a color grading tool. So click on the color grading tool. Now, it doesn't go down on the layer, and right now you'll notice I'm on the background layer, so let me click on the top layer, and click this plus, and when you click the plus, that puts the color grading tool down on the layer. Now, the same principle here, I'm going to put a black mask on it and a multiply blend mode, but the reason I'm going to use a color grading tool is because I'm going to do some color grading here. I think I'll need to do that, and this will really make it easy. Let's go ahead and X out of the color grading tool and click on the zone mask button. And I'm looking for this light glare, so I'm going to click right here to select that area and click OK. And now we have a zone mask, and as you can see, it's targeting it really nicely. I'm going to take this slider and drag it to the right a little bit just to see if I can get a little bit better selection. Yeah, right there. See, it targets it really nice. And it sits between a zone 2 and 8, so it's a perfect candidate for a zone mask. And I may just lighten it up a little bit, not much. Just like that. I think that's good. I'm going to output it to the black mask white brush, painting through a selection. I'm going to reduce my opacity. Right now it's at 40%. I'm going to type my 2 key. That'll get me down to 20% opacity. And now I'm going to adjust my brush size to right around here. Now I'm just going to paint over this entire area. I'm never lifting the brush because I want things just to flow evenly through this entire area here. And it's only targeting that certain zone that I've selected. Okay, that's good. It's still a little light here, so I'm going to come over here and just paint over here one more time in this area right here. And I think that's pretty good. Let's take a look. Here's the before and here's the after, so that really tones it down. But now what I'm going to do is I need to make my color grading tool active again, so click on the curves adjustment right here. And now we're going to click on the color grading tool by clicking right here. I'm going to click on the highlight block, and I'm going to take this and drag it way down into here like that. Now here's the before and here's the after, but see, it put a little bit of a color grade in there, a little on the blue side in there, which really helps. And again, here is the before and here is the after. So I think that really works out nicely. Also, take note of the properties panel here. You can see I have just a linear line through here, but red and green have been pulled down, and that's what's added that color grading in here. But it's only targeted the highlighted areas. Now I'll continue to study the image, and I notice these lighter areas over here, I'm going to call this a mountain, look a little too light, so I want to darken them up. So we're going to try another zone mask, but we're going to do the same thing with the curves adjustment layer. Now I'm going to get rid of the color grading tool by clicking on the X. The adjustment does not change. I have a selection here. I need to deselect it, so click this button on the combo panel to deselect. Grab a curves adjustment layer, black mask. You know the drill, multiply blend mode. Let's try another zone mask. Now that's a light area, but let's see if a zone mask will work. So let me click on the zone mask button. Let's click on the light areas in here. Like right here, I think represents a lot of that lightness. And click OK. And as you'll notice, that is sitting right between a zone 5 and a zone 6. It's between zones 2 and 8, so perfect for a zone mask. I'm going to drag the slider to the right a little bit just to see if I can just get a little bit better, tighter selection. Like right there, I think is good. And now all I want to do is take this brightness slider and adjust it to the right just to really lighten that area. I'm not going to do any tightening because I want a broader selection, because I want to get a nice smooth even adjustment through here. So if it hits some of these darker gray areas and brings those down in value a little bit, that's going to be just great, and it's going to be a better edit if I do that. Now I just need to output it to the black mask white brush, painting through a selection. I still have that 20% opacity. I'm going to make my brush a little larger, and I'm just going to paint right over here. That water down below is protected, by the way. And I can just simply paint on here. I have not lifted my brush yet. Certain areas that I want to go darker, I'll lift the brush and paint again. Okay, so now I'll make my brush a little smaller and paint over this area again in here, right in here. This area is a little too light, but this is why I like hand painting this stuff, so you can make certain areas darker than other areas, and this is really nice. And if you're doing lightning, the same effect applies, or the same rule applies, I should say. So just like that, and I think I've got it. Maybe over in here a little bit. Yeah, I think that's good. Let's take a look. Here's the before, and here's the after. So it's darkened that up. I might get this a couple more times right in here, and right in here again, maybe up in here. Just don't want your eye to be drawn too much to that area in there. And get this again, and I think I'm good. Here's the before, and now the after. I think I'm a little strong right in here, so all you need to do is click on the black brush, and I put my opacity down to 10%, and I can just, ease off in that area right there, because I think I was a little strong. It didn't look quite right. And while I'm at it, there's some light areas over here that zone mask will target. I want to bring these down, so let me go back to a white brush. I'm still at 10% opacity, but let me pull some of these light areas down in value a little bit, which I think will look better. So just right over there like so. Let's take a look. Here is the before, and here is the after. Now we can move on. I still feel these grasses are a little bit too light over here, so let me work on that next. I have a selection here, so let me go ahead and click this button on the combo panel to deselect it. Grab a curves adjustment layer, black mask, and multiply blend mode again. Let's grab a zone mask, so click on the zone mask button on the TK8 multi-mask panel, and I'm going to choose this light area on this grass. Click OK. I'll just lighten that up with this brightness slider a little bit. I think that's good. I might just tighten it just a little bit, just to protect me on the edge over here. Now let's output this to a black mask white brush painting through a selection. I'm at 10% opacity. Let me go to 20%. I'll type my 2 key. I just want to darken this grass up a little bit right in here. How about over in this area? Yeah, just darken these up a little bit more. I think that's going to help. Just to darken it up just a little bit more. Let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. I think that helps. Now, I want to bring up the overall contrast in the entire image, and I'm going to do something a little different here. I'll use the color grading tool. Now, right now I have a selection, so I need to deselect this. I'll click this button on the combo panel, click on the color grading tool icon, and don't forget, you got to click on the plus to add the color grading tool. I'm not going to use any masks. And all I'm going to do is this. I'm going to click on the shadow block and drag it to the left, like to right about here, just to get some nice contrast in those shadows. And then I'll click on the highlight block and drag it a little bit to the right, just to lighten up the highlights. Here's the before, and here is the after. So that's a global contrast adjustment. And that also gives me the added benefit of a slight saturation boost. Now I want to lighten up my midtones. I'm going to X out of the color grading tool so I can see my multi-mask panel. I'm going to click on the luminosity mask button, click on midtones 1. I only want to lighten up the midtones of the image. And now I'm going to output this to a curves adjustment layer, so click this button. And I'll change the blend mode to screen, which will just lighten up the midtones. And I think they're too light, so I'll take the opacity and I'll pull it back. And I think right about here, 62%. Here's a before and here's an after. So just a slight lightening of the midtones. The next thing I want to do is use a TK action. And I think soft pop is the one I want, because what it'll do is it'll pop the textures and pop the color a little bit, and this image has a lot of nice texture, and a little more color will not hurt it at all. So let's try soft pop. Now you'll find soft pop in your TK actions. You can click on either the combo or CX panel, the TK button, and your actions will be in there. I like to leave my CX panel open at all times so I can just grab actions really quickly here. So here's soft pop. I'm going to click on that and see what we get. And yeah, see, it really pops the texture as well as the color. But I only want to apply it to midtones because I don't like, it's too strong of an effect right now. So let's see what happens if I put a midtones mask on this soft pop layer right here. We can click on the luminosity mask button. I'm going to click on midtones 3. And if you click this button, it'll apply that to that soft pop layer. So right like that. We'll click that. And now check this out. Here's the before and here's the after. And it's only applying it to the midtones. So it tames it down a little bit, but I still get a lot of nice texture and color here. Okay, we're nearing the end. You see up here in the upper left-hand corner, this area is a little bit too light, too low contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a curves adjustment layer by clicking this button on the multi-mask panel. Again, a black mask, put it in the multiply blend mode. I'm going to go ahead and click on the white paintbrush. Now, I'm not using any masks here. I'm at 20% opacity, and I'll just simply paint over this area, just like this, with a nice soft edge brush. Okay, I have not lifted the brush, making sure I get all this area in here. I'm going to go to 10%. I'm going to type my 1 key and just paint in this corner up in here, just like that. I think that's good. Here's the before, and here is the after. So I think that really helps. I overpainted here a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and grab my black brush and make my brush a little bit smaller and just paint off any extra darkening I have right in this area right here. Okay, so here is the before and the after, and I think that really looks good. By the way, if you want to keep an action panel open, let me X out of here. All you have to do is click on TK and make sure you have close TK unchecked. All right, and that'll keep your actions open when you run an action. This image needs a vignette, so I'm going to click on the basic vignette action. So just click on that, And I always take the Gaussian blur radius just the way it is. Click OK. And now we could take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. And I don't really want you to see that vignette, and I really can't tell. When I shut it off and on, you can definitely tell there's a vignette. But if you study it out here, look at it a little bit, it looks good. It doesn't really look like a vignette, but it keeps you pulled into the image, and I like that. So there's my basic vignette. Are you ready for another action? How about the color luminosity action, which is right here? And it lets you target the different colors and adjust the luminosity values of them. I'm going to start with red. Now, this is a black and white adjustment, but it's not any black and white adjustment. It's in the luminosity blend mode. However, all these settings right here are calculated to make no change on the image. If you normally put a black and white adjustment up, this image would not look this way. It would look different. But if I shut this off and turn it back on, you don't see any change. Tony Kuiper has calibrated this black and white adjustment layer to not make any change, so it gives you a good starting point. I'm going to start with red. Now we can either lighten up the red tones or we can darken the red tones. And I want to darken the red tones, and I think right about here is good. And let's play with the yellows. We could try lightening them. No, I want to darken them. 67 I think looks good. And now let's go for greens. I'm going to pull this back. There's not much green in here. There's a little bit like right in here if you look. And maybe something right around there. Now cyans, we have some cyans in here. Now I can lighten cyans, but no. Look at, it's really affecting that water. You see the water down in here? I'm going to take this cyan and take it way to the left. In fact, I'm going to take it almost the whole way to the left. Not quite, right about here. Now, it's not a good idea a lot of times to go to the extremes on these because you could get some weird looks if you do that. It's really not affecting this image, so I can really pull this cyan down in this image, and I think that's going to be good there. Now let's work with blues. I'm going to darken up my blues to maybe right about here. And now let's see if magenta comes into play. So, yeah, there's some magenta in there. So I'm going to pull this magenta a little bit darker to maybe right about here. So let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. So that's made a big dramatic change to the image. It's added a lot more drama and I really like it. So I always like to try color luminosity, usually at the end of a workflow. Sometimes it's really great. Other times it doesn't do such a great job, but if it works, it really works. And on this image, I'll tell you what, again, here's the before and here's the after. So it's one to always give a try. I just have one final thing to do, and that is to pull the saturation down on these grasses. I think they're a little oversaturated. So I'm going to click on this Hue Sat Adjustment Layer button right here. I'm going to click on my Targeted Adjustment tool and just click right here and drag it to the left. And just ease off on that saturation to maybe, I don't know, maybe right about here. And let's check it out. Here's the before and here's the after. And it also tones some of the saturation up on this mountain as well. I'm going to go back to the color luminosity layer. And I think I'm a little strong on the cyan, so I'm going to ease these back a little bit. Yeah, maybe just something like that. I think that looks better. Here's the before and here's the after. Let's see the overall before and after. I'm going to use my before-after action. Here's the before. It started out looking like this, pretty lackluster, right? And here is the after. A nice dramatic image, and I think it came out really well. Well, there it is. Another TK Friday comes to a close. I really explored some zone masking today, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial today, this full edit. Hey, if you enjoyed it, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please subscribe. And also click that bell notification icon. Every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. I want to thank each and every one for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.